We've got a package of bills that's assaulting FFLs in California. Two in particular that we're going to discuss today. That's Senate Bill 965 and Assembly Bill 1869. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That's right, we don't just have one, but two bills that we need to discuss, specifically bills that are attacking FFLs in California. It's not exactly a news story, but it's one that continues to get worse and worse. To do that, we have brought in the legislative director for CRPA. He has his own radio show, that's Firing Line Radio. You can listen to it every Saturday in the morning on AM 590. That is Rick Travis. Rick, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. So let's get right into this. So potentially the more egregious one statewide, and I say that statewide because Assembly Bill 1869 is only affecting one city. Let's go ahead and start with Senate Bill 965. So guys, if you haven't seen this yet, Jacob, why don't you go ahead and put this on the screen? Let's just give a little read. I want to focus on one thing in particular, and that is subsection I, that hopefully we can talk about. And it reads like this: the total number of firearms used in crimes that were traced back to the dealer during the 1 year period prior to the inspection, and the percentage of total sales by the dealer in the same period of time that traced firearms represent. So what this bill is actually seeming to do, or at least on its face reading it, it looks like it's going to require firearms dealers to report their inventory to the Department of Justice. So, Rick, can you go ahead and give us an overview of this bill as a whole and how it might affect the community if it were passed?
Yeah, so first thing you got to look at, this is David Min, who politically is not doing the best right now. David Min is trying to see where he can bankroll money for future political tries, and one of his biggest bankrolls is Moms That Demand Action, Everytown, groups like that, who are starving for information on federal firearms licensed dealers. That's your local gun stores. So they keep trying to make FFLs out to be the boogeyman, where people are getting these firearms. And so what they're trying to do is create stats. And so this is what I say is classically like, hey, we have a narrative, but what we're looking for is the information to back our narrative. And so that's why they've cut it up this way. They're trying to go after FFLs. I guarantee you, if there was one, which I doubt there is, but if there was one that had a spike or some kind of number that was tangible, they will run that as the banner and use as a broad-based paintbrush on every firearms dealer.
That's kind of what I was thinking when I was looking at this. You know, it's almost like you create legislation to fix problems or potentially fix problems, but what we've seen from our legislature is almost like they create bills that would pave the way for future legislation, right?
Yeah, they're lazy and they're not attacking the problem. I mean, obviously, you know, had this bill, and I say this all the time to people, had this bill been in place a decade ago, name me one mass casualty incident here in California that we went, oh, dang, Kevin, had we just had 965 in place, that wouldn't have, oh, wait, none of those people were buying firearms from FFLs. They were all stolen, black market, except we already know that data, but that's not stopping them.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at. A lot of firearms original purchase is from the FFL, but maybe if they actually thought this out, they might try to look at a statistic of how many times does a firearm illegally trade possession after its original sale before it's actually used in a crime. What is the legislature actually looking for when they're only looking at the original purchase?
Well, you also, I'm going to take you back. If you go back to the first line, it says the total number of firearms used in crimes. Just stop there. Because when we read the whole thing, I think for any of us, including lay people out there watching this, are going to be like, yeah, okay, what's your point, Rick? Here's my point. If you look, I remember Costa Mesa Police Department, few years back, their police chief went out and touted and said, look what we've done. We removed all these gang firearms off, these assault weapons. Ruger 1022 is an assault weapon. Lever action's an assault weapon. Like, what are you doing? There wasn't one AR-15, which is not an assault weapon. I'll say that straight out. But there was nothing that was being misclassified by the left, even in that collection. When it says total number of firearms used in crimes, okay, so let's talk about what a firearm crime could be. A firearm crime could be of, oops, I didn't transfer this right. That's a firearm crime. Do you think they're going to say, oh, Let's break that down. These were transfers that didn't go the right way. Or this is when I took little Billy and forgot I needed a hunting license when he was shooting birds that a lot of people did with their Daisy BB gun when they're kids. It has none of that. And so, what they'll pin at is, oh, this is the number of crimes, as in assault with a deadly weapon type crimes. But that's not what this is saying. It's saying all crimes, every infraction, which is a ticket, every misdemeanor, and felonies. But they're going to purport it as being felonies only.
Well, and we actually see them do a lot of that, right? When you're talking about firearms deaths, they include the statistics for suicide and then paint them as violent acts, which most people would think about one person doing something to another person, as well as legitimized firearms death, whether that be a criminal who is endangering others, who is subsequently shot or something like that. So you got a potential of that happening here with these statistics, which could be akin to maybe them writing a bill to reduce terrorism with vehicles, but asking for data on every crime, which could be a speeding ticket, to be included in that collection of data. Is that really what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think the classic example that anybody that listens to me testify in the Capitol hear me say over and over and over again is the left will sit, that's coming for your firearms, will sit there and say, well, this is because the number one, Portantino loves to say this, the number one cause of death in children are firearms. Okay, define children. And most of you are like, Rick, come on. We know what a child is. Yeah, well, your legislature doesn't, because your legislature said you're not a child till you're 7. And you don't quit being a child till you're 22 or 24.
Right.
Because why? They're able to take all the gang violence and everything and stack it up. But if you look at what the classic definition is, birth to 17 years, 364 days before you go click to 18 and become an adult, why firearms, Kevin, aren't even in the top 20. But when you skew the data set, you can make it say what you want to do. And that's the narrative of Everytown and other groups like them and Giffords. And that's the narrative the left carries, but that's not the fact. That's not the truth.
Right. Well, so, I mean, this is something that is sincerely pointing towards demonization of the firearms community.
Yeah.
They're doing it through FFLs. And again, on top of everything that they're requiring from FFLs just to stay in business, all the money put in, all the paperwork that needs to be done. Now they're going to have people going in and auditing all of these transactions and inventories and require additional reports. Just makes it harder and harder for FFLs to exist. Speaking of making it harder for FFLs to exist, if you can't advertise specifically on some high traffic highways like freeways in the city of Hawthorne, that's going to hurt business as well. Jacob, if you could pull AB 1869 up, let's go ahead and read through what this is. So the summary here states, existing law, the Outdoor Advertising Act, provides for the regulation by the Department of Transportation of an advertising display as defined within view of public highways. The act regulates as off-premises advertising display, a display along a highway that generally advertises business conducted or services rendered or goods produced or sold at a location other than the property where the display is located. This bill would subject digital displays owned by the city of Hawthorne that would otherwise regulate off-premises advertising displays to treatment as on-premises advertising displays if certain requirements are met. So, Rick, what the heck is this bill saying, and how does it specifically apply to FFLs?
So it's really interesting. I grew up as a kid in Gardena, which is also known as the freeway city. Hawthorne's practically next door. Hawthorne is another one of those cities in the South Bay of Southern California that has not one but 2 freeways. So it's got the 405 freeway that goes through there, and it also has, I believe it's the 110 that cuts through the city of Hawthorne. So you have 2 freeways. This is enacting the California Department of Transportation, also known as Caltrans, to be able to go down and be police for the legislature and say, oh, this is something that you do. And what's interesting is when you read the bill in fine detail, the bill is talking about, hey, we don't want cigarette companies to be on there. We don't want adult entertainment to be on there. So think about how the public in general looks at those 2 things. Oh, and you know what's just like those? The Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, a constitutional right. Wait, smoking a cigarette, nothing to anybody who chooses to do that. That's your right as far as I'm concerned, but not a constitutional right. Adult entertainment, again, not going to make a comment, not a constitutional right. Owning firearms, a constitutional right. And what they're saying is they're willing to break the First Amendment, which is the right of freedom of the press and free speech, which is what advertising is as a marketing tool, and say, we're going to break that amendment so we make sure we kill the one that comes right after it. And when they try to do this, California Rifle Pistol Association has a program that you're very much involved in. I'm grateful for that, called the Local Ordinance Project. And our Local Ordinance Project hit this hard when the city council tried to do it, and it failed. Because why? If you look at the Sea of Hawthorne, you have some pretty big companies in that area, like SpaceX, that have quite a few people that, are Second Amendment advocates. And they don't like that. And so the very liberal left city council failed. They went to Bradford. And Bradford said, you know what a cool game is? I can go to the state legislature where 79 votes don't care because they don't have constituents. And so I can change the bouncing map. And we're seeing that across the landscape as a new tactic of the left of, well, if I can't pass it locally because my local constituents don't believe in me and I still want to be king, I'll take it up to the assembly.
Well, let's actually talk about that for a second. And I have some experience in this too. You know, I spent probably 2.5 or 3 solid years advocating for gun shows at the fair board level, whether that be up in Cow Palace or Ventura or Orange County or San Diego. And that was the trend that we saw, right? You know, especially Orange County and Ventura County.
And San Diego.
We had people showing up every single meeting to advocate for the contract of gun shows. And we won them over. We won those arguments. And then because we have a supermajority in Sacramento, we then see those appealed. Procedurally, is this a common thing that's happened throughout the history of California, or is this more of a new thing?
Yeah, let's boil it down. I mean, you went up against, I believe her name was Ashley Aiken, who now holds office in Anaheim, I think as a council person or mayor. Haven't looked recently, but, you know, Ashley was on that board. She fought very hard, you know, and so I always respect anybody if I disagree with them for fighting hard for what they believe, but she fought very hard and she lost at the fair board level. What'd she do? She went to a brand new senator, David Min, who we just talked about in the last bill. And David Min's like, yeah, no problem, I got you. And he took it to the state level where, like I said before, 98% of the people voting have no constituency. They don't represent the area. And therefore, again, their vote, that's not hard to do. It's like, hey, who am I going to tick off if I vote with you? Nobody. What do I get for it? Oh, your vote on one of my bills? Done. Deal. And that's what they're doing. And so it's literally zero representation that is balanced.
Yeah, but that's kind of alarming to somebody like me, and it should be alarming to anybody who's watching this as well, because you have an area where that representation is 100%, where something like this loses, and then it gets taken to a place where the representation is less than 2%, and it gets passed anyways. Very worrisome indeed, but we are going to keep following these bills, especially the ones pertaining to FFLs. And guys, they are going to be we are going to need advocacy for these bills and many other like these more than anything throughout this coming year. I know it's an election year, but advocacy on these bills is just as important. We're going to continue to do that. As always, please like, share, and subscribe to these videos and to this channel. It really helps get this message put out there. As always, for this year at least, we're going to want everybody as informed as possible when they go to that ballot box for the election in November. So thanks, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.